In the 21st century, when technology connects billions of people and knowledge has become the most powerful form of wealth, there are still places where learning is an act of resistance. This is the story of a girl who challenged one of the most brutal groups in the world, and also the story of a conflict that crosses borders and ideological war for the freedom to learn. Today we explore the Taliban's attack on Malala Yousafzai, the extremist methods of the group, and the global impact of this battle. Imagine a valley nestled among the majestic mountains of Pakistan, a place of breathtaking beauty known as Swat. For centuries, it was a cultural jewel, famous for its ancient Buddhist heritage, its lush green fields, and its vibrant traditions of poetry and music. This was the world Malala Yousafzai was born into. Her childhood was filled with the familiar sights and sounds of a close-knit community. She grew up in a home where education wasn't just valued, it was a way of life. Her father, Ziauddin Yousafzai, was a poet, a school owner, and a passionate advocate for learning. He ran the Kushal school, where Malala and her friends dreamed of becoming doctors, teachers, and scientists. In this early world, Malala was just a girl who loved books, competed with her classmates, and believed in the power of her own voice. But the first whispers of change were already on the wind. Small signs of tension began to emerge as extremist ideologies started to seep into the valley, threatening the peace that had defined her entire life. It was here, amidst the growing shadows, that a young girl began to understand that the simple right to go to school was a freedom she might have to fight for. The Taliban's roots trace back to the chaos that followed the Soviet-Afghan War in the 1990s. Initially, emerging as a group of religious students, or Talib, in southern Afghanistan, they promised to restore order and enforce their own strict interpretation of Islamic law. Their ideology quickly spread, crossing the porous border into the tribal regions of Pakistan. It was in Swat Valley that this extremist movement found a charismatic and dangerous new voice, Maulana Fazlullah, nicknamed the Radio Mueller, through illegal FM radio broadcasts. Fazlullah captivated listeners with fiery sermons, blending religious rhetoric with promises of justice and a return to a purer way of life. But his message was one of brutal control. Soon, his followers were no longer just preaching, they were enforcing their will with violence. Girls' education was declared un-Islamic and forbidden. Public floggings and executions became instruments of terror used to silence any dissent. The valley's rich cultural heritage was attacked, music was banned, and historical sites were targeted. In a terrifying campaign against knowledge, over 400 schools, mostly for girls, were systematically bombed and reduced to rubble. The beautiful valley of Swat had become a battlefield, and the Taliban's rule was absolute. As darkness fell over the Swat Valley, a single light refused to be extinguished. In 2009, 11-year-old Malala began writing an anonymous diary for BBC Urdu under the pen name Gul Makai. Her entries were a raw, unfiltered window into a life lived under constant fear. She wrote about the sound of artillery fire at night, the sight of armed men in the streets, and the heartbreak of seeing her school uniform packed away, unsure if she would ever wear it again. She described secret schools held in hidden rooms, where girls risked their lives for a few hours of learning. What started as a child's personal account quickly became a powerful symbol of resistance. Her words, broadcast across the nation and then the world, gave a human face to the conflict. International journalists took notice, and soon, the anonymous blogger stepped into the light, revealing her identity. Malala Yousafzai was no longer just a schoolgirl from Swat. She was a voice for the voiceless, an activist who, despite her young age, fearlessly spoke out against the Taliban on Pakistani television and in documentaries. Her courage made her a national hero, but it also made her a target. By 2012, the Pakistani army had pushed the Taliban out of Swat Valley, but the threat was far from gone. A tense, fragile peace had returned, yet extremists still operated in the shadows, their ideology festering. Malala, now 15, was an internationally recognized activist. For the Taliban, her voice was more dangerous than any weapon. On the morning of October 9, 2012, everything changed. It was a normal school day. Malala and her friends boarded the bus for the short ride home, their chatter filling the air. As the bus made its way down the familiar road, two young men flagged it down. One of them boarded, his face covered. He asked, "Who is Malala?" No one spoke. but all eyes turned to her. He raised a pistol and fired. A single bullet tore through her head and neck, striking 2 of her friends as well. Chaos erupted. The attack was not random. It was a calculated act of terror meant to silence her forever. The news spread like wildfire, first through Pakistan and then across the globe. Shock and outrage unified the world in condemnation. The girl who had fought for education was now fighting for her life. The moments after the shooting were critical. Malala was rushed to a local military hospital, her condition so severe that few believed she would survive. The bullet had traveled through her skull, narrowly missing her brain but causing significant swelling. Doctors in Pakistan performed a life-saving surgery to relieve the pressure. As her story captured the world's attention, a global mobilization began. Leaders, activists, and ordinary citizens from every corner of the planet rallied in support, holding vigils and demanding action. Recognizing the complexity of her injuries, the decision was made to evacuate her. An air ambulance, specially equipped as an intensive care unit, flew her to the Queen Elizabeth Hospital in Birmingham, United Kingdom, a facility renowned for treating complex trauma cases. There she began a long and arduous journey to recovery. Multiple surgeries followed to repair her facial nerve and reconstruct parts of her skull. The world watched, holding its breath, as this young girl, who had become a symbol of courage, began her slow and painful fight back to life. To understand why a global extremist group would target a teenage girl, we must look deep into the Taliban's ideology and methods. Their power is built on a foundation of absolute control, maintained through fear and a distorted interpretation of religion. Recruitment often targets young, disillusioned men from impoverished and uneducated backgrounds, offering them a sense of purpose, belonging, and divine mission. Propaganda is their most potent weapon. Using sermons, radio broadcasts, and now social media, they twist religious texts to justify extreme violence and social repression. Once in control of a territory, their rule is absolute. They dismantle existing social structures and replace them with a brutal enforcement of their laws. Education, especially for women, is seen as a direct threat. An educated woman is an empowered woman who can question, reason, and challenge their authority. Under Taliban doctrine, women are relegated to the private sphere, their roles reduced to domesticity. By denying them education, the Taliban ensures the perpetuation of an ideology that depends on ignorance to survive. This is not a fringe belief. It is the core of their strategy for maintaining power. Against all odds, Malala not only survived, she was reborn. The attempt on her life did not silence her. It amplified her voice 1,000 times over. From her hospital bed, she became a global icon for the right to education. On her 16th birthday, she stood before the United Nations and delivered a historic speech that echoed around the world. Her message was clear and powerful. One child, one teacher, one book, and one pen can change the world. In 2014, she became the youngest ever Nobel Peace Prize laureate. With her father, she co-founded the Malala Fund, a global organization dedicated to breaking down the barriers that prevent more than 130 million girls from going to school. The fund invests in local education activists, advocates for policy changes, and amplifies the voices of girls fighting for their future in countries like Nigeria, Brazil, and Afghanistan. The impact is real. From building schools and refugee camps to providing scholarships for aspiring female leaders, Malala's work is turning her personal tragedy into a global movement for change, proving that the pen is indeed mightier than the sword. The war for education is a war against extremism itself. There is a direct, undeniable link between poverty, lack of opportunity, and the rise of radicalization. When young people are denied an education, they are denied a future. This vacuum of hope becomes fertile ground for extremist groups who offer a twisted sense of identity and purpose. Repressing women is not a side effect of their ideology. It is a central pillar of their power. By controlling women, they control families, communities, and the future. An educated populace is the greatest threat to any authoritarian regime because knowledge fosters critical thinking, empathy, and a desire for freedom. When a girl learns to read, she learns to question. When she goes to school, She discovers a world beyond the confines of oppression. Education is not just about books and classrooms. It is the most sustainable and powerful weapon we have to dismantle the foundations of hate and build a future rooted in peace and equality. Malala survived a bullet. But what truly threatened the Taliban wasn't her body. It was her voice. A voice that now echoes in millions of girls across the globe who refuse to live in the darkness of fear. The extreme war for education is far from over. It is fought every day in secret classrooms, in refugee camps, and in the hearts of activists who dare to speak out. Every open book is an act of courage. Every girl who picks up a pen is a soldier of peace. And every one of us who stands with them is part of the solution. Thank you for watching. If this story inspired you, remember, knowledge saves lives, shapes destinies, and challenges oppression. Support education, support freedom. Help this message reach even further. Like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more documentaries like this.